This is the story of our trip to Iceland. I departed from home in the UK and via Terminal 2 at Heathrow flew with Iceland Air all the way to Reykjavik. Landed at Keflavik and met up with my brother and his son Andrew. We headed into Reykjavik, where we stayed very close to Reykjavik Cathedral at the excellent Eric the Red guest house. We headed out and had a look at some of old Reykjavik and its characterful buildings before heading down to the Sun Voyager sculpture on the seafront, and then to have an Icelandic hot dog, which is considered something of a delicacy. We checked the weather forecast and then headed out to Landmannalaugar on the bus, having some delicious cookies on the way there. Landmannalaugar, there's nothing very much there, and it was freezing cold when we arrived. Thankfully not raining for the moment. Well done, Andrew. But there was some confusion about which way to go. So, Louis, which way is it?
It's either that way or that way. And this is the map, not my belly.
Oh, yeah. Okay, let's go.
Yes!
Yay!
That way.
Yeah. We're starting.
Nope.
Time is now
You
20.
guys were right.
Oh,
Oh,
what?
really?
That way. Oh, okay.
I just asked him. I'm not sure what those people are doing.
Come on then, let's go the right
Alright,
way.
we'll go that way then. See ya. You'll pass us.
Having worked out which way to go, we set off on the Laugavegur Trail, which would eventually take us to Thorsmörk. It is not a trek that should be taken lightly, and there are many hazards along the way. However, it is beautiful, and we did see some fantastic birds, including a ptarmigan, which we saw very, very close to Landmannalaugar at the start of the trek. Navigation is required during the trek, particularly early in the season when some of the trails may be covered with snow. When we got to the Hrafntinnusker Hut, excuse my pronunciation, we discovered that the campground was completely covered in snow, so there was no possibility of us camping there, and we had to move on after having made ourselves a hot lunch. We're at a hut. Say hello.
Hello, hello.
Hello.
There we go. And that's where we are, and that's where we're going.
Jeez, that was fast.
We trekked over the plateau where the snow was rapidly melting, and eventually came to the edge of the escarpment where we could look over lower ground towards the next campground at the Alftavatn Huts, which is a spectacular spot. Spectacular, but very, very cold once the sun goes down behind the hills. We also saw some Harlequin Ducks there, which you don't see in the rest of Europe. The next morning, my brother flew his drone to give us an overview of the campground there. The facilities are basic. It was along this next part of the trek where we had to ford our first river, and it was the first of several that we had to cross.
Quite powerful.
After a relatively short trek, we came to the campground and huts at Emstrur, which is very well positioned, and you can then take a short walk over to have a look at the fabulous canyonlands close to the hut, which is probably a round trip of about 40 minutes.
I wouldn't do that. That's too scary. Too scary. Way too scary. Oh, that is vertigo.
After a long, rainy third day and fording a couple of rivers, we finally came to the end of the Laugavegur Trail and arrived at the Laugavegur Huts and Campground, where we stayed overnight and woke up the next day to fantastic sunny scenery. We decided to undertake a day hike to the Fimmvörduháls pass. You have to cross the Krossa River. What we didn't realise on that day was that there is actually a footbridge over it. So we did cross the mighty Krossa, which was the largest of the rivers that we forded during our trip. The scenery was absolutely spectacular, and we happened to see a snow bunting on the ascent and descent from Fimmvörduháls. Up at the top, despite the very windy conditions, and on the way back down, my brother managed to fly his drone and got some fantastic footage. At the top we separated, they went down and I continued on a little bit until at last I could see the sea and Skoja in the far distance. The next day my brother and I went and had a go at climbing Rjupnafell. We didn't actually finally manage to get there. It was a little bit too far for the time that we had allowed ourselves, but the views were fantastic and we found a perfect picnic spot where in fact we did go skinny dipping. We got fantastic views of the Icecaps and of the surrounding mountains in beautiful Thorsmörk.
There's another, I think, after this.
We made a journey back to Reykjavik, where we stayed very briefly. And we spent our final night near Borgarnes in a cosy little cottage. Strongly recommended. This is it, the entirety of our accommodation. Whew. We were all certainly feeling tired after our trek.
Hello, my name is Andrew.
On our final day we went for a quick trip around the Reykjanes Peninsula before my brother and his son headed off back to the United States. I went on a little bird watching trip. I went out to Hafnaberg to see the seabirds, and it took about 1 hour round trip on foot. I also went out to see the volcano, but unfortunately I left it too late in the day and the sea mist had come in, so I didn't actually get to see the volcano. After sleeping in my car, I caught the plane back via Northern Ireland, as you could see there, and home. It was a fantastic trip.